The ravens had scarcely settled from their long flight before Jon Snow stood upon the battlements of Winterfell once more, listening to the wind swirl through the broken crenellations like some half-remembered song of childhood. The air tasted of coming frost, of hearth smoke, of secrets too long buried beneath generations of blood and snow. Ghost padded at his side, white as storm spume, crimson eyes fixed on the distant black pines where the dusk gathered. It was there, at the ragged edge of memory, that the first rumor found him. The parchment arrived curled and cracked from cold. Ink faded, as if the words themselves feared to be spoken. It spoke of Valyrian steel not merely as a weapon, but as a seed, a remnant of dragon flame captured in metal. It hinted that the swords forged before the Doom were more than masterpieces of bladesmiths. They were husks, chrysalis shells meant to be broken at the turning of an age, when fire called to fire once more. The notion was as mad as the visions of Melisandre, yet Jon felt the truth of it ringing behind his ribs. He had bled upon Longclaw too often not to sense the subtle heartbeat beneath its waves of dark rippled steel. Yet the North was quiet in its own sullen way. Sansa governed ably from the great keep, her words soft, but her will iron-hard. Arya rode to sea with Nymeria's pack somewhere far beyond the Bitterbridge fogs, chasing ghosts neither wolf nor woman could name. Bran, if he still called himself that, drifted through the godswood like a shadow cast by the weirwoods, roots spread deeper than bone. Peace, such as it was, pressed against Jon's shoulders like a too heavy cloak. For peace required that old swords be sheathed, and mysteries left to rot in their crypts. But he was the bastard who had become king, and then relinquished kingdoms. The wolf who had worn a dragon's mantle. The man whom death itself had rejected. Rest would never fit him. So he sought Samwell Tarly first, in the echoing vaults beneath the citadel, where Ariadne lantern moths flitted through dust-laden air. Sam's smile was as bright as ever, though his eyes had grown old leaf-brown with knowledge. Tomes lay stacked around him like ramparts. At the center, open upon a lectern of black oak, rested a scroll inked with glyphs that shimmered when touched by light. "It's High Valyrian," Sam said, whisper-soft, as if the shadows might be listening. "An order from the Dragon Lords to the smiths of Qohor, centuries before Aegon crossed the narrow sea. They speak of Drakenor, of quenching swords in the heart-blood of slain worms, and of gestation?" "Gestation," Jon repeated, unsettled. "A sword forged to ripen, not to wound." Sam translated, fingertips trembling above the parchment. "When tempered beneath moons of ice and suns of fire, the metal becomes fertile, awaiting quickening flame." Jon remembered the simmering heat that pulsed through Longclaw's hilt each time it tasted dragon fire at the Battle of Winterfell. He remembered the impossibility of that night. How blades of ordinary steel shattered against the dead, yet Valyrian edges sang with a song only the living could hear. Perhaps they had not been singing for the living at all, but for something still unborn. Sam unearthed more, fragments of a ledger listing certain swords lost in the Doom, a sailor's diary describing a crimson egg carved from a sundered blade, a brazy whisper that Balerion himself hatched upon shards of broken steel, salvaged from old Volantis. Each tale alone was madness. Together, they formed a map of whispers, a road along which only fools or kings would tread. "And which am I?" Jon asked the maester beneath the dim lantern glow. "Whichever you need to be to save us next time," Sam replied, voice hoarse with both pleading and dread. Thus did the journey begin, not with fanfare, but with the silent closing of a library door. Jon left Old Town by night in a black-sailed skiff, Ghost leaping aboard, while the tide licked the pilings like a cat's tongue. Gilly wept softly against Sam's shoulder as they watched him fade into mist. Sam's farewell was a nod heavy as granite. Promises thrummed in the taut ropes overhead. Promise of discovery, of ruin, of something older than the citadels of men. They crossed the summer sea in the company of Lycian traders, whose smiles were knives glimpsed beneath silken scarves. John kept to his cabin, studying the constellation charts Yandel had annotated, patterns the Valyrians favored when timing their greatest forges. 4 stars formed the claw, 5 the dragon's eye, each burning at precise latitudes only once every few centuries. The next convergence, Sam insisted, would arise over the smoked ruins of Valyria within a fortnight. Fate, it seemed, waited for no king's permission. Storms stalked them south of Nea. Forked lightning burst across bruised heavens, casting the waters gold for a heartbeat before darkness swallowed ship and sky. The captain cursed the gods of wind. John felt power in that gale, a hot breath coiling beneath the chill. Ghosts' hackles rose, the direwolf spun, gnashing at air alive with phantom scent. When at last the storm broke, the sea lay sheen black and utterly still, as though mourning something drowned but not dead. Valyria revealed itself at dawn, jack-toothed cliffs weeping rivers of obsidian, crater lakes that bubbled molten crimson, stone statues melted into grotesque shapes of agony. Ash ghosts drifted between broken colonnades. The Isle of Cedars, once green, smoldered like an ember long after the fire had died. Their skiff threaded narrow channels where slag whispered beneath the waves, iron singing to iron. Every breath tasted of brimstone and memory. At the edge of a caldera crater, shaded by the fractured ribs of some colossal beast, long turned to stone, John found the forge. It was no forge in truth, no anvil, no hammer rack. Only an altar of fused swords, hundreds of blades melted together by cataclysmic heat, uplifted toward the sky like supplicants. Yet the metal had not cooled to dead slag. Veins of molten light coursed within like blood through marble. When John neared, Longclaw vibrated at his hip, the wolf's head pommel snarling in reflected glow. Ghost whined, unease rippling through sinew. John laid his gloved palm upon the altar. Pain stabbed like white glory up his arm, yet beneath the agony a heartbeat pulsed. It had answered his own in kind, slower, deeper, older. Somewhere far below, fire moved. He drew Longclaw. The blade drank the screaming light. Runio-like ripples along its length blazed until the air wavered, and in that bending of sight, John glimpsed shapes, scaled coils twisting through reddish dark, eyes as vast as moonrise. Fear gripped him, yet it was tempered by wonder, the kind a boy feels seeing snow for the first time beyond Winterfell's walls. He raised the sword overhead, the forging wind roaring about him, though no breeze stirred. When he struck, it was not upon the altar but into it. Steel met steel with a bass note that shook pillars long crumbled. Longclaw cleaved, fissures spider webbing from the wound. The altar exhaled. Heat roared up, flinging John backward onto seared earth. Ghost leapt, snarling at sparks that danced like fireflies above molten cracks. Out from those cracks something emerged. 3 fragments of metal, each curved and hollow, each glowing from within like sunrise glimpsed through smoke. They were neither blade nor coin nor gem, yet held echoes of all 3. When the glow faded, John knelt to them, realizing that what lay at his knees were eggs. Eggs forged of Valyrian steel, resembling no dragon's shell painted by Maester's quill, yet warm and thrumming with the same latent fire. He took them carefully, wrapping each in layers of shimmering black dust that flaked from the altar. They weighed more than iron, yet pulsed with a strange buoyancy, as though their substance were half song. As he cradled them, he felt the brandisting of new purpose etch itself across his soul. But forging was only birth's beginning. Quickening required blood and fire. Blood freely given, fire carefully kindled. And so John's path curved northward again, though the route would take him first through strange waters where Lycian pirates whispered of the price on his head, through the smoking markets of Volantis, where red priests hailed him as Orahai reborn, through the dense green hell of the disputed lands where mercenaries played chess. In Myr, he bartered a Sword brother's oath from Dario Naharis, golden mustache now streaked with war, and time, in exchange for knowledge of hidden kilns once fueled by wildfire beneath Eris' reign. In Kohor he met a graybeard smith whose palms bore the scars of forging the unsullied spines. The old man spoke of quenching embers with dragon bone crushed to drifting ash until the metal remembered its fire. Each step gathered fragments of a recipe more arcane than any potion of Korth, and with every lesson John felt the weight of those eggs grow warmer against his chest. Yet the world itself seemed to shift, as if sensing that one long-dormant melody might soon resume. Reports reached him of Dothraki Kalazars, no longer fearing fire, but riding with torches aflame, searching the sky at dusk for shapes they had not seen since Daenerys' fall. Merchants in Mantari swore that an enormous shadow passed nightly across the smoking sea, stirring maelstroms that swallowed entire fleets. In King's Landing, Queen Sansa held council after council, ravens winging north and south with parchments stripped of seals before burning unread in secret hearths. She feared, Jon knew, that old chaos would return on new wings. He longed to talk to her, to Sam, to all those he loved. But the more footsteps he placed upon this road, the more he sensed how fragile its stones. A whisper in the forge heat told him revelation demanded solitude, for the birth of dragons from steel would either save men or destroy them. Some truths could not be shared until they were whole. Thus, at last, he climbed the Bone Mountains to a cave older than men, following tales of stunted wyverns that clawed the twilight there. Myrish lantern oil glowed sapphire upon walls carved with spiral sigils. Ghost's breath steamed before him, though summer still held the lowlands. At the cave's heart crackled a fumarole vent, midnight vapors curling like serpents around an ancient brazier wrought of fused black swords, the twin of the altar in Valyria, but dormant. The eggs pulsed, their glow answering that slumbering forge heart. Jon built the fire as the text commanded, cedar from black pine forests soaked in rendered whale fat, shards of dragon glass ground into powder and scattered widdershins, a blood offering touched to each shell, his own, drawn with a dragonglass knife whose edge glimmered purple beneath the coals. When his blood struck the steel shells, they sang, 3 notes in minor harmony, sliding into each other until the air itself quivered. Hours stretched. Flames climbed. Smoke danced patterns that shifted from deerwolves to ravens to dragons, each form melting into the next like a tapestry set alight. Jon endured the heat, ice-blue eyes fixed upon the shells, his skin blistering, though visions of frost kissed his mind. Memories of the wall, of the dead. He spoke no prayers. The world had not listened when the dead rose. It would hardly start listening now. Instead he waited, because waiting was a craft he knew as well as swordplay. At the 7th hour, cracks appeared upon the first shell, faint hairlines glowing white. They did not widen, but the light within brightened. A heartbeat followed, deeper than before. The cave echoed it. Jon's own heart answered. Then nothing. The shell cooled. The fissures healed, lines smoothing as though never there. Yet the egg had changed. Its weight heavier, its pulse slower, deliberate. It was growing. Relief warred with dread. He had coaxed life, but life that still slumbered. How long would it sleep? The scrolls differed. Some spoke of moons, others of years, others of seasons, measured by swords melted in rivers of molten stone. what measured time to a dragon carved of metal and memory. He did not stay to guess. There were 2 more eggs, and Winterfell lay far. He returned west by hidden passes, avoiding villages lest rumor outrun him. Whispers still thrummed along trade routes, tales of cold candles that burned blue in abandoned castles, of children born with scaled fingertips near Dragonstone, of a dire wolf howling at dawn atop the ruins of Harrenhal while flames flickered behind its eyes. Signs all pointing toward change. At Maidenpool he received a raven with Sansa's seal, a single direwolf's head stamped into red wax. He hesitated before breaking it. The words inside were gentle but urgent. Bran had retreated beyond the wall, saying only that winds were shifting. The lords of the Vale bickered. The Riverlands rose against fresh bandits. A red star bled across the night sky. She begged her brother, King Bastard Wolf Dragon, to return. He rode hard, the eggs strapped in a satchel lined with furs soaked in seawater to keep their heat muffled. The Quiet Isles monks ferried him across waters silver with moonlight. The sistermen guided him through mists. Wildlings now sworn to House Stark opened forgotten tunnels beneath Last Heart. When at last Winterfell's walls loomed, dawn spread rose gold over frost-caked rampart. He smelled bread baking, heard children at play, and felt the eggs within his cloak hum like tame thunder. Sansa greeted him in the Godswood, red leaves drifting about her hair like glimmering embers. Her eyes, blue, brave, cunning, searched him, finding both the man she had once known and something other. Yet she smiled, because wolves recognized their own even when clad in dragon flame. He spoke little. Some truths, he said, still needed forging. She understood, though fear lurked behind her calm. She offered him space, hooked him to the crypt where the kings of winter slept. There, beneath silent effigies, he laid the eggs upon cold stone and watched each shell's glow sputter but not fade. They argued against the dead chill. They would not be extinguished. Every night he sat vigil. The north whispered of early snows, though it was late summer. Ghost remained sentinel, ears pricked to sounds beyond mortal range. And Jon fancied he heard scaly wings beating below the world, or talons scraping stone underfoot. Other times he felt only the ache of waiting. Then came lightning without storm. One afternoon the sky cracked white, though clouds were thin. A thunderclap rolled from horizon to horizon, reverberating through Winterfell's bones. Ravens rose in a black wave. Children cried. The crypt trembled. Jon rushed below in time to see the first egg split slowly, a seam opening like a lidless eye. A glow spilled upon ancient dust. Something moved inside, but not yet free. It closed again, sealing itself, but now the shell bore new patterns. Ripples reminiscent of Valyrian steel's twisted folds, only alive, shimmering as they crawled. The egg breathed, and each breath was fire inhaling frost, forging a balance Jon had never seen. That night Bran's raven arrived, the three-eyed one, young feathers tipped silver. It perched upon the still-sealed gates and spoke a single human word in a voice not its own, soon. Then it took wing, feathers leaving icy motes. Jon knew then that gestation neared its turning. He gathered what remained of the lore Sam had copied, spread scrolls across torchlit stone, and plotted ritual circles of dragon glass powder mixed with weirwood ash. Steel must meet ice. Dragon flame must be tempered by winter's heart. Only thus would hatchlings of blade and furnace draw true breath. On the eve of the equinox he stood within the circle, long claw in hand. Snow drifted through cracks overhead, each flake sizzling upon the brazier's rim. The eggs lay before him, pulsing in triple time. Bagdoom, Bagdoom, Bagdoom. Like war drums muffled by silk. He sliced his palm once more, blood falling upon the shells. They drank. Heat flared, not scorching, but cleansing, a baptism in flame. Far above, the North Star flared brighter, as though lending light. The first egg seemed parted, this time irreversible. Out slid a claw of brilliant silver metal, edges not fleshy but honed, reflecting the torchlight like mirror shards. Yet it moved with unmistakable life, curling and uncurling, testing air that burned blue around it. A second claw followed. Then the snout, an elongated blade crowned by two ridges that caught light as ripples. The creature unfolded itself in deliberate silence, stretching wings of interlocked steel feathers that rang softly, the hush of sword on scabbard. It was small, no larger than a mastiff, but its presence filled the crypt. Frost melted in a halo around its talons, and steam drifted upward from its joints. Eyes opened, pools of molten quicksilver with black slits. They fixed upon John, recognition born in an instant older than speech. He bowed his head, humbled beyond words. The second egg cracked, then followed by the third, but the story of their births belongs to chapters yet unwritten, for dawn approached, and the north called. The hatchling stepped forward, touch of each talon sending sparks across stone that had slept 1,000 years. It unfurled its wings, and the hush turned to a low chime, the song of living steel. John extended his hand. The creature sniffed, warm breath vaporizing against cold air, and touched its snout to his blooded palm. At contact, Longclaw flared white along its length, and somewhere deep beneath Winterfell, the dead kings might have stirred, wondering what new age rose upon their realm. Above, Sansa watched from the stair, tears silvering her lashes, though her face was flame-lit. Around her the torches guttered, yet the steel-born dragon glowed steadier than any candle. It turned its head, regarding her with alien curiosity, then looked to John once more, as though awaiting command. He gave none. Command was a thing for armies. This was something holier. Instead, he knelt so they were eye to eye. The dragonfold metal reflected his scarred face, the ghosts of past wars gleaming upon its wings. Then it opened its mouth, not in threat but in breath, and exhaled a thin jet of white-hot fire that etched lines of runes upon the stone floor. The marks formed a sigil, wolf interwoven with flame, snow swirling about steel. Suddenly John understood the words that had haunted his dreams since Valyria. Steel may slay dragons, but Valyrian steel remembers fire. Memory, given breath, becomes future. He rose with new purpose. Beyond Winterfell walls, winds howled, not of winter alone, but of something vaster. Change neither cruel nor kind, simply inevitable. The hatchling leapt to his shoulder, metal claws surprisingly gentle against leather. Its wings folded like a cloak of swords at rest. Together they ascended into gathering dawn, where the first rays of sun kissed forged scales and turned them radiant gold. People would speak of that morning for generations, the day when a wolf returned bearing a dragon wrought of steel and flame, when Winterfell's chimneys ran with light hotter than any forge, and the scent of burning snow drifted across the world, heralding an age unknown. Yet this was only the beginning, for two eggs remained sealed, their hearts beating in secret rhythm. Mountains of prophecy still lay ahead, and beneath the ashes of Valyria, deeper than any had dared dig, something vast stirred at the echo of newborn wings. And so time itself drew a breath, waiting, while Jon Snow, last son of ice and fire, prepared to teach the North how to cradle dawn within the palm of night. Creaking hinges groaned as the iron-bound door of the crypt swung wider, letting drafts coil around centuries-old dust. The newborn dragon of living steel perched on Jon's shoulder, talons clasping leather with preternatural delicacy. Its bright eyes captured every shimmer from the torches in concentric rings, as though furnace sparks had frozen within liquid metal. Sansa's breath clouded the air between them, suspended for a heartbeat that seemed to expand until it filled all the world. Jon's gaze never quite left the second and third eggs, still resting on the granite bier, but he felt in his marrow that the choice he made next would echo beyond his own life, and into stories not yet imagined. He spoke softly, voice scratchy from sleepless nights. This place was built to keep the dead. It was never meant for births. Sansa replied in the hush that only siblings share. Winterfell can stretch to new purposes. But are you certain? Dragons might belong to fire and storm, not ice and memory. One. Jon's gloved hand rose to stroke the hatchling's cheek ridge. The dragon leaned into the touch, releasing a resonance like the distant strike of a bell. I am as certain as a man can be when walking through fog. The path appears one step at a time. We take it or we freeze. From the stairwell, Maester Walken emerged, frail shoulders draped in gray. Despite his age, he walked with decisive purpose, carrying a polished brass astrolabe that glowed with etched constellations. The air here grows ever colder, he said, lips twitching with the scholar's excitement no wolf's warren could wholly suppress. Your Grace, the instruments register a pressure change that defies natural cause. Something in these vaults is drawing heat like a smith's bellows reversed. Jon nodded. It is the eggs. When they quicken, they drink warmth. Once they hatch, they return it, thrice over. Sansa brushed a strand of auburn hair behind her ear. Then, we must not deny them. If winter's bite deepens, a forge heart might save more than it threatens. Still, the lords will fret at the very whisper of more dragons. No mountain, surely. Lords have fretted at every turning since the Dawn Age. Jon's lips quirked with weary humor, then straightened as purpose settled. But time allows no vote. Help me prepare the godswood. The heart tree's roots intertwine with the keep's foundations. They have tasted every king's blood, and Bran says trees remember truer than men. If life is to take hold, let it fill both Noir, ice, and forge. Ice and forge. Maester Walken bowed stiffly. The ravens will carry news before the sun is thrice risen. Your sister can contain most, but beware eager allies. Lord Manderly's ships prowl every coast, and Lady Dustin's riders harvest secrets like wheat. Lazio. Jon shrugged the weight of prophecy from his shoulders long enough to smile. Then let them come. Winterfell's gates will not close against kith, kin, or wary guests. But this, he inclined his head toward the eggs, is not pageant trick. Some will declare blasphemy. Others will seek advantage. We prepare for both. They labored through daylight. Masons lowered the eggs, still cocooned in furs, into a shallow hollow dug at the weirwood's base. Bran's raven perched above, black feathers silver-shocked by age and seeing. The hatchling watched, wings flicking open and shut in restless cadence. Steel feathers clinking softly like a choir testing its notes before service. Then, almost shyly, it hopped from Jon's shoulder to the ground, circled the shallow nest 3 times, and lay across the shells, chest plates threshing slow and deep. Steam drifted. Frost receded from the soil as warmth seeped outward in pulses, the color of dawn behind snowstorm clouds. Leaves above rustled though no wind blew. Night fell violet and star-choked. Ash gathered so absolute that distant wolves dared not break it. Jon knelt within a circle of runes, inscribed in ash and powdered dragon glass. At each quarter point, he had driven an iron dagger through folded parchment bearing his blood mark. Every breath hissed between clenched teeth when he felt the second egg stir, as though some unseen hand within pressed outward just once, testing. Ghost raised his muzzle and howled low, spine thrumming. The steel dragon echoed the note, but his voice carried the timbre of ringing steel, traveling up sword blades on a quiet battlefield. The egg's surface spasmed again, this time a longer convulsion. and thin fissures parted in a branching lattice. A line of molten quicksilver bled from the split, yet cooled to gleaming iron as it reached air, forming a spider web of artists' filigree across the shell. Jon's pulse hammered, flames in the iron braziers guttered, and then silence resumed. Sansa, bundled in sable cloak, rested one hand on her brother's shoulder. "Patience," she whispered. "Even gods turn on slow wheels." The second egg settled once more. Its fracture lines sealed themselves, but they remained visible as patterns of darker steel, like runes etched by some master smith whose tools were time itself. As the glow within subsided to ember warmth, Jon pressed his palm to the shell. He expected heat, but felt instead a tingle like the prickle of static before lightning. A presence, unborn yet aware, rolled against his blood scent, and for the briefest instant, he smelled cedar smoke and charred bone, as though hearing music across a valley. Winter deepened. Vianos, Mitterdaunu, Tosho Ah. Snow drifts mounted the battlements. Word leaked and traveled faster than a summer plague. Within a fortnight, ravens arrived from White Harbor, the Rill's deepwood moat. Some letters threatened revolt if dragons soared above the neck. Others pledged undying fealty to the wolf who commanded living flame. To each Jon wrote in calm but measured script, promising no dragonfire would claim northern hearth or hold fast. Yet he refused to promise impotence, for beyond Winterfell's walls traveled rumors of darker shapes than dragon. One frost-clear dawn, a rider arrived from Last Hearth, half-frozen atop a staggering mount. Brought before Jon and Sansa, the man's lips split, voice raw. "Something moves upon the ghost hills, lords, not dead nor live. Shapes of ice that walk upright and leave no prints but shards. We followed to barrows older than kings. Torches would not burn, steel cracked. When we fled, their eyes shone white as rime." Sansa's cheeks paled. Jon felt again the phantom chill of Hardhome, of the long night averted by fragile chance. He dismissed the rider with warm blankets and mulled ale, ordered scouts, and turned to the godswood where the eggs slumbered. Duty, the familiar, ever-tightening noose, tightened further. He found Bran waiting beneath the heart tree. Snow crystals clung to his hair like bits of spiderweb. Pupils were thinned, the gray pools bridged by distance. "The past stirs and future bleeds," Bran murmured. "Bran is too small to hold it, but the tree remembers, and I am roots." Jon knelt. "Tell me what you see." "I see steel shaped like scales, glimmering beneath starfire. I see wolves wreathing flame at the world's edge. I see a blade bending, not to break the wheel but to forge new spokes. Yet spokes spin. Motion births shadow. Some are drawn to heat, some to cold. They converge where you stand. Mosh. Then I stand ready." Bran's mouth curved, part sorrow, part pride. "You will need more than readiness, brother. You will need trust from those who fear flame, and fire from those who fear frost. 3 dragons for a world divided thrice, ice, fire, and the blood of men that bridges both. The cost will be choice, yours, theirs, perhaps mine." Wind whispered through the red leaves overhead, scattering crimson shapes across white ground like drops of arterial blood on parchment. The steel hatchling rested at Bran's feet, head cocked as if listening to root songs. Night after night, Jon studied manuscripts, forging alliances not of swords but of oaths. Glover sent 50 foresters to bolster Winterfell. The Mormonts, fierce as ever, pledged bear warriors to guard the godswood. Even Lady Dustin, ever suspicious, dispatched riders to scour the King's Road for southern spies, claiming she would rather keep dragons northern than let them roost in the lion's den. And still, the eggs ripened. Second heartbeat stronger each moonrise, third stirring like thunder waiting for summit clouds. Then, On an evening lit copper by lingering sunset, a horn sounded at Winterfell's east gate. Jon arrived to find Davos Seaworth leaning heavily on the pommel of a short sword, his cloak rimed with frost. Behind him, 10 men escorted a pallet draped in sailcloth. The smell of brine and sorrow traveled ahead. Davos' single remaining hand touched his chest. "Beg pardon, my lord." Storms claimed many on the way. "I bring a relic dug from the seafloor near Dragonstone." Sailcloth peeled back, revealing a corroded length of Valyrian steel, broken at midpoint, edges warped by centuries of salt. "Our nets snagged it. The maesters in Old Town say the waves there churn with ancient fire. Thought you'd make better sense than they." Jon laid fingertips to the rusted blade. Beneath the crust he felt a flicker. Faint, yes, but kin to the heartbeat thrumming inside the unborn eggs. His breath caught. A sword that remembers drowning, yet still dreams of flame. Sansa frowned. "What use is a shattered memory?" "Memory is foundation," Davos answered. "Brick, walls full, the stones keep their story." That night, Jon placed the relic among the eggs. It quivered like a tuning fork struck upon granite, resonance bleeding into the shells. The second egg's fracture lines glowed anew, and the third egg shifted as though roused. Ghost prowled, fur bristling. Steel hatchling lifted its head, throat plates vibrating with subdued song. At moon's zenith, the second egg opened. Heat burst so intense the closest torch heads blew out, their iron brackets hissing. Within the void of sudden dark, amber light poured from the opening eggshell, silk sheened like molten pearl. Taloned foot emerged, forged of burnished bronze rather than silver, jointed with ingenious hinges. Sparks cascaded as the creature flared its wings, broad, delta-shaped, featherless, solid sheets of metal, veined with channels where quicksilver fluid shimmered. Its maw parted, vents along its neck releasing steam. The bronze dragon fixed eyes on Jon, these pools deep crimson, swirling, and uttered a chuff that scattered embers and ash like fireflies. Without warning, it leapt upward, clasping the low vaulting of the godswood canopy, metal claws carving furrows in wood, but finding anchor. It hung there, wings beating once, twice, gathering lift, then soared across branches into night sky, bright with starscape. Jon's heart tore between alarm and awe. Sansa gasped, hand over mouth, as she watched the bronze miracle vanish beyond the towers. Riders scrambled, horns blared. Within moments, Winterfell's courtyards were chaos. Guards racing to ramparts, dogs baying, children screaming possibilities. Yet Bran's raven croaked overhead. Let it fly. Its voice was his. Its first breath must taste wind beyond walls. See how sky receives memory wrought new. They obeyed, though fear quickened many pulses. Hours later, the bronze dragon returned, alighting on the highest tower, chimney brick glowing where it perched. Smoke stacked upward in perfect column, as though the creature breathed and tempered its own heat with calculated precision. Below, those who looked on in trepidation found themselves more curious than frightened. Children laughed when its wing edges refracted torchlight into rainbow shards across snowy courtyards. In the afterglow of wonder, Jon sensed suspicion shifting to tentative acceptance. Dragons bred of blade and ice lacked the raw menace of flesh-scaled beasts. They were sun on steel, art come alive, dangerous, yes, but also beautiful in a way soldiers recognized. A weapon that might protect hearth and kin if wielded by steady hand. While Winterfell adjusted, Jon and Sansa convened council. Davos, Maester Volkan, Lady Alice Karstark, Lord Glover, and Ser Jorah Mormont returned from exile after years roaming, Essos seeking penance, gathered round the great table carved with direwolf reliefs. Jon remained standing. You see where we stand. 2 new wings eclipse our sky. A third waits. Beyond our walls, shapes of ice roam hills that once slept quiet. South, Casterly rock sharpens claws. East, Bravos counts debts. Dragons haven't ended wars. They've shaped them. We must forge purpose before others thrust one upon us. Lady Alice leaned in, dark eyes bright. Many will call for conquest. A dragon's shadow terrifies faster than an army of men. Fear is a guttering torch, John answered. It flares bright, then sputters, leaving dark deeper than before. Davos scratched stubble. Show folk the light, not the heat. The direwolf stood vigil through the long night. Folk recall that. Maester Woken tapped parchment. Already ravens arrive, asking whether dragons might warm failing harvest fields. The riverlands lost whole orchards to untimely frost. The North's forges cannot reach Valyrian heat. Perhaps these creatures can temper iron for plows that won't snap come next deep winter. Navorning, Sir Zian, Tawitsi. Sir Yoras, grizzled baritone, cut through speculation. Fine promises, but remember that power invites prey. If word spreads that northern dragons serve all, sellswords and slavers will queue at our gates. Worse, the remains of Targaryen loyalists may attempt theft. John's voice hardened. We will not cage ourselves with dread. We will show the realm that this gift serves life, and we will train as though threat beats at every door, for sooner or later it will. Thus began days of doctrine. The Bronze Dragon, soon dubbed Bronze Crown by Glover's smiths, responded to whistles pitched beyond human hearing, tuned by Maester Wolken's flutes. The silver hatchling, whom children called Frostbite for the manner it cooled the air before releasing heat, proved quicker but more cautious, preferring to glide between rooftops rather than soar. The egg of midnight steel continued to brood, each pulse measured, ominous. John drilled daily in the yard, directing wooden targets for Bronze Crown to strafe with narrow jets of blue-white flame, hot enough to melt iron buckles, yet precise enough to leave scorch marks in runic patterns. At first, watchers trembled. Slowly, awe replaced fear. When the dragon carved this dark sigil into dead snow by order, cheers rippled. Trade envoys arrived under banners white for peace. Those from White Harbor brought barrels of preserved cod and fine winter wool, in exchange for a demonstration of metal breath forging. Bronze Crown heated pig iron billets until they glowed gold. Manderley smiths hammered the steel into rivets twice as strong as ordinary. A second envoy from the free folk north of the wall offered carved mammoth bone for roof beams, in exchange for warmth to thaw frozen river mouths where salmon lay trapped beneath ice. With each success, hope kindled, yet storms brewed. One dusk, a raven bearing a crimson wax seal of the Iron Throne arrived alongside a Lannister envoy, escorted by gold-cloaked outriders. Sir Emmond Hill, half-brother to Queen Cersei's late cousin, presented a letter whose edges curled under winter wind, but whose words dripped with heat. Queen Dowager Cersei, still regent for her young grandson, who sat a tottering throne in the capital, demanded John travel south with his dangerous constructs, swear fealty, and submit them to royal study, lest they disturb the king's peace. John's jaw clenched. Sansa read the parchment thrice. Finally, she looked up with slow burn in her eyes. Cersei would shear a direwolf to line her lion skin. Not unexpected. None undoing. Pureness. John dismissed the envoy with cordial coolness. A feast, cordial words, no promises. Yet that night he stood alone upon Winterfell's highest parapet, steel hatchling perched silent, watching constellations swirl behind ragged clouds. Memory of Daenerys' dream of breaking wheels flickered, accompanied by echo of dragon shrieks over King's Landing turned ash. He squeezed the stone merlon until knuckles whitened. These dragons were not born for tyranny. They must never become tools to repeat that horror. Lower, in the courtyard, Bronze Crown nested near the smithy, radiating gentle heat that made snow hiss away. Boys who once practiced archery now warmed their hands near gleaming wings, telling stories of the last long night, as though it were yesterday's storm. Hope, John mused, was a fragile seed, yet dragons forged of hope might anchor it. Even as Winterfell thrummed with new energy, shadows lengthened beyond the ghost hills. Scouts returned gaunt-eyed, whispering of barrow mists that congealed into warriors of ice wielding spears of frost glass. These beings did not command dead armies, but walked alone or in pairs, carving runes into snowdrifts that burned blue until sunrise melted them. Livestock vanished, found later frozen, solid, eyes icicle-rimmed. The watchers on the wall, few as they were, reported flares of pale light dancing opposite the aurora, dancing at unnatural cadence like beacons repeating signal. One frigid midnight, an obsidian dagger soared from darkness to strike the trunk of the weirwood beside John's head. Bran emerged from between roots, stared at the blade with wide, mortal eyes. "They mark territory," he murmured. John turned the dagger under torchlight. Swirls of frost etched its surface, Valyrian patterns in negative. "Can we parley?" Bran's gaze drifted far. "These ones are born of fracture, not accord. The Night King's death broke chains, but shards learn to cut. They embrace purpose devoid of hate or mercy. They exist to balance flame by devouring heat, and they come for the eggs. We will not yield them." Joan's voice iced. "Then steel dragons must prove more than guardians. They must become bridges across extremes, flame that does not burn, ice that does not kill, blood that does not betray. Such paradox is path of pain." "Nadamtri," John nodded. "Pain enough to forge will." Preparations intensify. Smiths invented lamellar armor woven with thin plates, heated under Bronze Crown's breath, tempered until lighter than chain yet stronger than plate. Archers' arrow tips quenched in dragon breath, rumored to pierce ice with preternatural ease. The bronze dragon trained to weld rampart gaps shut within breaths. Frostbite learned to exhale narrow cones of cold to douse wildfire. Winterfell became crucible where our opposites blended. When at last the third egg cracked, the world seemed to pause, inhaling collective breath. It happened during a blizzard so fierce the courtyard vanished behind curtains of white. John sensed the shift before seeing. It was in the hush, the way Bronze Crown folded wings and Frostbite's silver eyes shone. Deep in the godswood, he and Sansa watched frosts swirl thicker than night itself, yet around the egg no snow settled. Instead, motes of ice hovered in constant orbit, as though magnetized. Sound came, not of steel singing nor fire roaring, but of hearts beating in perfect unison. John realized the rhythmic pulse matched his own, matched Frostbite's, matched Bronze Crown's bass reverberation, yet harmonized into a chord so low, his bones resonated. Crack lines spread across the midnight shell, each glowing neither red nor blue but a shifting spectrum, amethyst to viridian to deep indigo, colors that should not dwell within metal. The shell peeled open like unfurling petals. Out rose a dragon wrought of night sky, matte black steel laced with opal veins. Its wings, when spread, revealed pinpricks of light, as though starlight had punctured the metal. In its eyes burned twin novas, black cores circled by halos of violet fire. This creature exhaled, not flame nor frost, but a hush that stilled the blizzard. Snowflakes within 20 paces froze midair, motionless, as if time faltered. Moments later, they drifted to the ground as gentle as dandelion seeds. Calm spread outward, rippling across Winterfell until torches steadied, banners ceased flapping, hearts slowed. A collective whisper rose from ramparts. John laid kneel in the snow. The dragon of night dipped its head, multifaceted eyes reflecting twin wolves. One white, one black, and a man between. And then, almost tenderly, it unfolded wings and coiled around the birch roots, as if guarding not just itself, but the other two dragons, the egg's husks, the tree, the castle, the north entire. Bran's ravens swept in circles overhead, croaking prophecy no tongue could parse. Bran's voice followed, soft through John's mind. Balance. Dawn broke clear next day, air crisp, sun cascading through icicles. For the first time in weeks, warmth lingered without dragon fire. Cold clung without cruelty. Folk called it perfect weather. Sleigh rides smooth, smithies temperate, hearths comfortable. John convened council again. The new dragon, named Starforged by the stable boys, remained silent sentinel, but its presence in the yard radiated peace, so profound quarrels sputtered before ignition. John spoke. 3 dragons now, each representing facet of our world: heat, chill, calm. We are their stewards, not masters, and they, perhaps, ours. Threat marches from the ghost hills. I say we meet it halfway. He planned a march east with levies from Carhold, Flint's Finger, and the Free Folk. Bronze-a-Crown would scout by sky. Frostbite would form rearguard, dousing tracks to confuse pursuit. Starforged, if it chose, would accompany Bran, who in turn would weave sight into far trees. Sansa objected softly. Winterfell cannot lose its shield. If you fall, dragons fall, and we fall with them. John placed a gloved hand over hers. If I stay, danger spreads, claws at our gates. We must show these Ice Walkers we do not cower behind stone. We meet them with new dawn. Ush. Lady Alice broke it. Then we ride. Preparations commenced. Smiths affixed steel plates along Bronze-Crown's shoulders to anchor signal banners. Frostbite's wing edges were lined with mirrored glass to flash coded light in moonshine. Starforged accepted no harness. It refused approach beyond John or Bran. Fine enough, its breath bent light itself. Harness seemed folly. The night before departure, John visited the crypt of Lyanna Stark. Snow sifted through cracks overhead, dusting the statue's stone winter roses. The steel hatchlings trailed behind him. Even Starforged entered, though older king's ghosts moaned faintly at its presence. John knelt. You once flew south for love, aunt. I fly east for duty. If they are the same, may I remember your courage. If they differ, may I recall your cost. In the gloom, torchlight flickered off Starforged wings, scattering specks that danced across ancestral faces. John felt their scrutiny, stern yet not condemning, perhaps curious. At dawn they rode. A vanguard of free folk under Tormund Giantsbane led the column, shaggy mammoth banners snapping. Flint spearmen followed, then Stark guards in black and gray cloaks trimmed with dragon scale patchwork sewn by Winterfell's tailors. Bronze-Crown soared high, a burnished streak above pale fields. Frostbite glided low, exhaling frost cones on river shallows to reinforce ice bridges for wagons. Starforged drifted between cloud layers, a shadow that bent sunrise into auroral arcs across snow. As they advanced, scouts discovered evidence of the Ice Walkers' passage. Trees flashed frozen until limbs snapped clean. Ground etched with crystalline sigils that glittered like gemstone mosaics. No corpses, no blood, only absence, as if life had been politely asked to vacate. One evening, they found a village where every hearthstone remained stacked, chairs pushed beneath tables, but every soul gone. An infant's wooden rattle lay on threshold, frost-rimed but still. Dread gnawed. John pushed on. On the 6th day, they reached a stone tor crowned by ancient weirwood stump. There the Ice Walkers stood, a dozen figures shaped like men, skin clear and radiant as blue-tinted glass. Their raiment was frost-woven, swirling patterns akin to snowdrifts. Each carried a spear carved of white heart ice, whose blades twinkled prismatic. They formed no line of battle, rather a ring as though marking sacred ground. John dismounted. Ghost took position at flank. Bronze crown circled overhead, heat shimmering. Frostbite perched upon a rise, twin jets of cold spiraling from nostrils. Starforged hovered silent, wings beating barely perceptible. The Late Walker stepped forward. Its eyes mirrored winter stars. It spoke without moving its mouth, words sliding directly into bone. Flame remembered. Steel gestates. Balance disturbed. Nazi. Nanen. John gripped Longclaw, the Valyrian wolf head hilt warmed by hidden fire. Balance restored, he answered. Dragons of steel are bridge, not torch to burn you. The walker tilted its head, ice crystals drifting off shoulders. Cold breath cools forge. Forge heat tempers cold. But men wield both with want. I wield with will, John said firmly. Will to guard living, what say you? The circle parted. Within lay a single shard of something indistinct. Neither steel nor ice, but translucence flickering between. Seed, the walker's thought explained. Our lost mirror to your flame. Melt or cherish. John recalled Bran's words. Bridge. He sheathed Longclaw, stepped forward, kneeled, and lifted the shard. It was colder than moonlight, yet painless, like holding wind. Within its core danced faint glow, reminiscent of Starforged's eye halos. He turned to the dragons. Starforged descended, landing with featherless grace. It extended one wing, covering John and the shard in cool shadow. Then it breathed, not frost nor flame, but that earlier hush which stilled snow. Around them, time slowed. Sound dampened, light bent. When the hush faded, the shard had changed, now showing a swirl of blue tempered by thread of living ember. The lead walker inclined its head farther, then stepped back. Core, whispered through bone. The ring dissolved into drifting snow that melted before touching ground, leaving only the hiss of wind. John exhaled at last. Fingers trembled. The shard pulsed in his palm. Neither fire nor frost, but a convergence. Behind, his retinue breathed relief, thick as hearth smoke. Torment laughed first. Well, Snowboy, looks like you taught a few icicles manners. John let himself smile. We taught each other. He raised the shard. A seed, perhaps a fourth dragon, or a key to closing wounds left by war. Bronze crown settled, emitting rumble akin to approval. Frostbite lowered head. Starforged looked on, unreadable but watchful. On the journey home, the weather held perfect balance. Days of crisp blue skies, nights of shimmering green aurora. Villagers whispered of a calm they had never known, of wells that didn't freeze solid, of snow that felt gentle rather than flensing. Still, challenges loomed. Cersei's envoys grew insistent. Bravos threatened trade embargo if dragons upset maritime balance, and tales spread of sellsword companies hoarding wildfire in anticipation of new conflicts. Yet as Winterfell came into view, its towers wreathed by 3 dragons circling in harmonious pattern, John felt a cornerstone settle inside him. He looked to Sansa waiting on the battlements, to Sam arriving with bundles of scrolls, detailing integration of dragon-tempered steel into plowshares and bridge rivets, to Arya returning from Bravos with whispers of southern alliances, willing to treat rather than war. He felt Bran's distant, watching through ravens and roots. In that moment, he understood that forging peace was not shaping one blade, but thousands of hearts, each tempered differently, requiring patience and heat and chill in equal measure. It would be endless toil, but he was a blacksmith's son in spirit, and there could be no nobler craft. At dusk, when Bronze Crown lit the brazier atop the tallest tower with precise lance of flame, and frostbite cooled the cisterns to crystal clarity, and Starforged crossed the moon, leaving comet tail of shimmering sparkles, the realm looked north and saw not threat nor tyranny, but a beacon. Some hearts fixed upon it with greed, others with fear, but many, many more than John dared hope, felt the stir of courage that warmth can kindle and cold can preserve. Dragons wrought of Valyrian steel had hatched, for John, for the north, for a world limping out of past shadows. Their fire was a promise, their frost a reminder, their hush an invitation. And as the first snow of true winter began to fall, soft, steady, tempered, the promise settled over fields and forests alike. The next age would not be burned or frozen. It would be forged. No, Snow melt sang beneath Winterfell stones, a quiet trickle threading cellars and forgotten drains, while spring sunlight gleamed upon towers dark with damp. Yet even as the season's first thaws softened the castle's austere silhouette, the three steel-born dragons kept winter's discipline alive. Bronze Crown patrolled the air in broad, burnished loops. Frostbite wove among ramparts with silent precision, and Starforged hovered at dawn above the highest tower, wings of starlit iron. Where their shadows passed, children pointed upward. Where their breath touched stone, masons swore they tasted forge and frost in equal mix. It felt, to every soul beneath those walls, as though the old world balanced on a razor of bright metal. One slip from harmony, one breath from conflagration or freeze. Inside the solar above the great hall, Jon Snow leaned over a long table crusted with parchments, wax seals, and half-finished maps. Sansa perched opposite, fingers laced, expression poised between concern and resolve. The morning's ravens had carried tidings swift and heavy. Queen Cersei's latest demand for fealty had arrived twinned with threat: render the dragons unto the crown, or face interdiction of all northern trade. The second scroll from Braavos outlined tariffs so punitive that Manderley fleets would founder in debt before they reached harbor. But more troubling still was the private cipher from Samwell Tarly. Rumors that Archmaester Marwyn had vanished from Old Town after proclaiming the Steel Dragon's anathema. Their very beating hearts an insult to the natural debt paid by Valyria's doom. In his wake, several Citadel scholars urged sanction, an alliance of ink and fear eager to bind the North in academic chain. Sansa exhaled slowly. We resign, trade, and starve. We obey and break the North. Neither path is tolerable. None. Jon tapped the parchment bearing Cersei's lion seal, a smudge of coal darkening its edge where he had pinched too hard. Cersei relies on our dread of winter and her myth of southern plenty, yet she forgets. Winter winds spare no walls, even gilded ones. If ports bar us, we master rivers. If coin deserts us, we mint iron. But we will not cede the dragons. Ghost lounged at the hearth, crimson eyes following every shift of Jon's shoulders. Though half asleep, the direwolf's muzzle twitched at each murmured word, as if weighing strategies of his own. Outside the narrow casement, Bronze Crown glided past, sunlight rippling along bronze wing panes. The dragon's reflections streaked across the walls like an arrow of living metal. Sansa rose, circled the table, and set her hand atop Jon's forearm. We have stalwart allies, Manderley, Glover, Karstark, and the Free Folk. But ports matter, gold matters. You must show the realm there is profit in peace. The realm loves spectacle more than treaties, Jon said. Then we give them spectacle enough to make small clothes quiver. But one of hope, not conquest. Her brow lifted. What are you steaming? Not steaming. Forging. A conclave at Winterfell. He gathered parchment and quill, drawing quick lines. Banners of houses invited. River runs trout. High gardens rose. White harbors merman. Bravos infinity not. Even Doran's sun spear, though snows rarely touch their deserts. A summit beneath neutral eyes. We demonstrate how dragons heal rather than burn. Show them a forge where bronze crown tempers plowshares. Frostbite cools, iron to perfect hardness. Starforge stills storm clouds for safe sowing. Let them stand in the god's wood, roots and iron and living steel entwined, and understand new covenant. Nanum, Sansa considered. Invite Cersei. Joan's mouth thinned. She will refuse or attend with daggers hidden in smiles. Either outcome reveals intent, but her courtiers crave spectacle. They may pressure her to attend for fear of missing a stage. A soft rap at the door cut their dialogue. Davos Seaworth entered, face wind-flushed, hair dusted with sawdust. Beg pardon. Lord Glover's carpenters near completion on the new amphitheater. Tiered benches, open roof, holds 2,000, maybe thrice if folk squeeze. He glanced between them, heard whisper of conclave. You heard true, Jon answered. We prepare to host every lord, envoy, and sellsword captain willing to cross our threshold. Aye, and half the realm will come to gawk, Davos mused. Gawking's well if pockets jingle, but many fear Valyrian craft beyond blade. Might need more than demonstration. Words, stories, music. Let them taste hope like mulled wine. Sansa brightened. A harvest festival reimagined. We present dragon-powered looms, weaving blankets, warm as any fireside. We show smiths forging wheel rims that never warp. We let children spin copper slivers with frostbite's breath until they blossom into snow roses. Beauty carves deeper than argument. Lim, on, bow. Jon smiled faint. Then we craft beauty. Preparations unfurled like banners on high wind. Artisans from White Harbor erected stalls of painted pine along Wintertown's main road, hawking stone-ground rye, smoked salmon, glass beads, the color of moonlight. Cohoric smiths, tempted by rumor, trekked months to witness the dragon's breath. They arrived ragged but eager, lugging crates of exotic ores rumored to awaken secret pigments in the steel scales. Bravozy silk merchants bartered for booth space near the gates, while Rhoynar distillers rolled oak casks of citrus liquor over snow-packed boards. Sansa commanded that every flag of visiting houses be hung side by side, no precedence except alphabetical, to teach equality at first glance. She oversaw kitchens that simmered elk stews, honey-glazed ham, and root vegetable pies large as shields. Septis prepared a modest sept of canvas and lattice for the faithful. The godswood remained inviolate, but Bran, despite his distance, gave silent blessing through wind-whispered leaves. Jon drilled with bronze crown and frostbite daily, perfecting displays of synergy. Bronze crown would heat iron lantern billets until malleable. Frostbite would quench them quickly, rendering crystal smooth finish. Starforge no show pony, but it agreed to hover above the amphitheater at dusk, unleashing its hush that stilled candle flames in unison. A miracle to hush any skeptic. 3 nights before conclave, a shadow crept into Winterfell. A cloaked stranger, slipping past guards at dusk to crouch near the outer kennel. Ghost roused first, hackles bristling. Jon followed, sword unsheathed. Beneath the hood he found not a cutthroat, but a slim woman whose cheeks were wind-chapped, whose hands bore calluses of bowstring. Arya. She grinned like a fox stealing hens. Thought you'd parade dragons without me? I came to watch the jaws drop. Jon pulled her into fierce embrace. I thought you halfway to the sunset sea hunting storms. storms are boring. Dragons built of swords and snow. Now that's new. Her gray eyes flicked upward where Bronze Crown circled. They move like dancers. Anyone tries to steal them, they'll find needle between ribs. He laughed low, a sound rare on his tongue these days. I missed you. Likewise, big brother. Now point me to your shadiest corners. Conclaves bound to lure snakes. I'll keep them underfoot. Meanwhile, Maester Wolkan deciphered the icy shard from the walkers. By lantern glow, he shaved thin flakes, observing their reaction to flame, frost, and dragon breath. The shard remained inert until he introduced both heat and cold simultaneously. Then it pulsed with gentle lavender light, edges smoothing into facets. John watched, awed, as the maester's trembling forceps set it within a copper crucible, where Frostbite's breath cooled one side and Bronze Crown's flame licked the other. In moments the shard unfurled like a petal to reveal a hollow heart, one that mirrored the pulse of the dragons outside, faint but certain. It is not egg, Wolkan whispered, but womb. A chamber seeking essence. What essence? John asked. The maester's eyes glinted behind spectacles. Perhaps the blood of balance. Yours, perhaps. Or something older. They set the womb beside Starforged, and John sensed recognition pass between creature and crystal. An almost imperceptible shimmer traveling from wingtip to shard. Starforged folded wings over the womb, as though sheltering a candle flame. No more motion came, but John felt sure some slow miracle had begun. At last the day of conclave dawned bright. Wintertown bustled with banners snapping, minstrels strumming lutes tuned to Dorne's sunny scales, Dornish herself in vibrant scarves, smiling at northern children, wide-eyed over pomegranates. The amphitheater brimmed with lords, ladies, sellswords, septons, maesters, even ironborn captains, smelling of salt. John strode onto the central dais, clad, not in crown or furs, but plain black leather belted by a simple iron buckle, studded with a chip of the shard. At his back stood Sansa in snow-white mantle, Davos in sea-blue cloak, Arya masked in the Watcher's shadows. Trumpets flared as Bronze Crown soared into view, bronze plates blazing. A hush fell heavy. John raised a gloved hand. Bronze Crown answered with a lance of blue-white flame arching skyward to burst into shimmering sparks. Gasps rolled like surf. Frostbite leapt from rampart to stage, exhaling a frosted plume that sculpted the sparks into glittering snowflakes, which drifted down but did not melt atop warm faces. Starforged silhouette glided overhead. Torches guttered out, then relit as though guided by unseen hand. In that suspended awe, John spoke. Lords and ladies, captains and crafters, faith keepers and free folk, you have crossed rivers of suspicion, mountains of doubt, deserts of old grudges to stand in one place. Here, now, Winterfell's stones have known war, famine, treachery, victory. They have never known this. He gestured to dragons perched with improbable grace. Steel given breath, fire tempered by frost, silence seeded with stars. Gifts, yes, but only if we use them to mend what our forebears sundered. He recounted the treaty with the Ice Walkers, how cold and fire had exchanged seeds of existence. He described Bronze Crown's forging of plows, Frostbite's quenching of bridges, Starforged's hush that calmed blizzards threatening hamlets. He did not boast. He offered, these dragons do not belong to House Stark, nor to crown, nor sept, nor bank. They belong to balance. They answer not to conquest, but cooperation. And so I ask, will you share burden and guidance? Murmurs rumbled. Faces reflected hope and wariness. Lord Grafton, gray-haired but fierce, rose first. I lost 2 sons in the flames of King's Landing. Dragon fire once seared more than stone. Why should we trust dragon spawn again? Narun, Yoal. John met his gaze square. 'Cause your sons died to flesh-born fire wielded without restraint. These dragons burn at our request, and only long enough to heal. They are forged from the very blades that once slew their ancestors. A reminder and a vow. They cannot grow beyond reason. Metal does not breed. They cannot rage beyond call. We learned to... He nodded to Frostbite. The dragon exhaled a narrow plume that struck a row of iron bars set in a stone trough. At once the bars glowed, then glimmered blue, water hissing into steam. When Frostbite withdrew, the bars stood straight, edges perfect, but no fire lingered. John drew one, passed it to Lord Grafton. Grip it, warm, not searing. Grafton's eyes widened. He lifted the bar overhead. Applause roared. Envoys stepped forward with own requests. A Riverland miller begged stronger saw blades for flood-felled timbers. A Sisseton fisherman wanted nets heat-sealed to resist tearing on reefs. John granted each demonstration. The amphitheater brimmed with astonished delight, yet not all hearts melted. Hush deepened when Maester Edward of the Citadel climbed the platform, parchment trembling. His voice quavered. The laws of men and gods remain unsettled. Blades, once folded, cannot change nature. Dragons, once born, hunger. History warns. John spoke gently. We heed history by surpassing it. Look upon these dragons. They feed neither on cattle nor villages. Their hunger is purpose, and purpose we provide. A sword is forged to kill, but a plowshare forged from that same steel grows crops, which nature wins, the one we choose to honor. The crowd rippled with thoughtful murmurs. Edward bowed, step unsteady, yet eyes alight with possibility. As dusk bled gold into violet, Starforged descended. Its wings expanded above the dais, scattering starlight reflections across every brow. The hush fell total. The womb shard floated between its talons, pulsing lavender. John stood between dragons and delegates. Balance is not gift, but labor. Tonight, each house may claim token, slivers of steel dragon, breath for craft. In return, you bind oaths to temper ambition with mercy, strength with stewardship, wealth with charity. We call this covenant of the forge. Now, wax seals soon thumped like heartbeats as envoys queued to sign their names on vellum. Stark, Manderley, Tarley, Martell, Redwine, even Myrish artisans whose city once rivaled Valyria's craft. Only Lannister seat remained conspicuously vacant. Their envoy stood stone-faced, refusing quill. After feast ended, venison roasted with juniper, Dorn's tangy wines, lemon cakes dusted with sugar frost. John strolled alone along battlements. Lanterns below swayed in crisp wind. Laughter drifted upward. He felt success bloom, but dared not savor long. History taught triumph to be fragile. Footsteps approached, soft, measured. Arya emerged from shadow. Snakes kept mostly quiet, she said. Yet one venomous tongue hissed. Lannister envoy sent raven at dusk, coded. I followed a hawk, saw where it flew. Past the neck toward Moat Caelan, where sellsword camp musters. Yon's Yaw set. How many? Maybe 1,000. Gold Company remnant, banners patched. Someone hired them to seize, not parley. The envoy returns south tomorrow. Without him, sellswords might lose patron directive. Arya's grin glinted. I can arrange his delay. She saw his alarm, rolled eyes. Not by blade, by rumor. We whisper he conspired with Braavosi to embezzle tariffs. He'll face own master's wrath soon. John exhaled, relief tempered by concern. Do it. But quietly. Yet the next dawn, thunder undercut quiet plans. Bronze Crown's warning roar shattered dawn chill. John raced to courtyard where Frostbite crouched low, wings mantled protectively over children ushered from stables. Above the south parapet, smoke coiled, olive green, acrid, wildfire. A catapult shell had detonated against stone, spraying jade fire across Rampart Walk, igniting tar buckets stored for repairs. Archers howled. Squires flung sand in vain. Wildfire needed drowning, not smothering. John vaulted stairs as Starforged swooped, unleashing its hush. Flame froze mid-gutter, flickering yet motionless, heat suspended. Frostbite followed, exhaling conical chill. Wildfire crusted into glossy black lumps that hissed but no longer spread. Within minutes, the inferno cooled to sullen slag, but the assault had signaled itself. Horn blasts echoed beyond Winterfell's ring wall, where tree line concealed treachery. Bronze Crown winged overhead, then Dove, exhaling a curtain of white-hot flame across a stand of fir, whose branches concealed siege scorpions. Screams from hidden mercenaries joined crackle of sap. Doll. Yet more catapult stones arced, some bursting high overhead into cascades of burning naphtha that fell like poison rain. John shouted orders. Archers loosed crimson-fletched shafts, tipped in dragon-quenched iron. Each arrow streaked with faint shimmer, punching through scale armor to fell men hidden behind mantlets. Bronze Crown strafed again, precisely torching war machines, but sparing forest canopy from complete devastation. Frostbite darted between flaming debris, dousing embers before they could find dry hay in Outer Bailey. Starforged remained above the central keep, wings outstretched, its hush radiating outward. As the low resonance swept the field, catapult cords slackened, frozen by sudden condensation. Siga arms yammed. Mercenaries fled, axes discarded. John seized the moment. He mounted his black courser, Longclaw at side, rallied northern cavalry behind him, and charged through the gates. Ghost bounded at flank. Frostbite silver outline shadowed above, wings raising powder snow. The skirmish in the frost-rimmed meadow ended swiftly. Sellsworth, blinded by wildfire smoke, broke ranks. Some surrendered. Others tried to flee but found Starforged hovering ahead, violet eyes reflecting their fear back at them. Without a shot fired, they dropped to knees. John rode among prisoners. Their captain, a lean Bravosi named Corin of the Quivering Blade, spat blood where arrow had grazed cheek. We followed Coin, he snarled. John dismounted, meeting him eye level. Who paid? The captain's lips twitched. Coin flowed through Bravosi broker, but weight smelled of Lannisport gold. He chuckled bitterly. South can't stomach North's new dawn. They want dusk eternal. John bound his wounds, refused to execute. Prisoners were escorted to Wintertown's Long Hall, put under guard. He dispatched riders to track Envoy, already flagged by Arya. They found him at Maiden's Pool, baggage ransacked, retinue dead of suspicious poison. News spread fast. Suspicion fell not on North, but on Lannister intrigues. The Envoy's documents, discovered by Arya, revealed signed orders authorizing the assault. Cersei's seal adorned margins. The realm's opinion pivoted overnight. Houses that had hesitated now saw Cersei's fear and felt their own greed for the North's miracle clarifying. Bravos, embarrassed by association, withdrew tariffs until investigation. White Harbor's fleets declared blockade on Lannisport if hostilities continued. Conclave resumed under tension, but stronger unity. Delegates drafted Charter of the Riven Flame, a treaty binding signatories to mutual defense against aggression aimed at steel dragons or their host realm. John resisted titles, but they crowned him Guardian of Balance, an office, not a throne, subject to recall should he breach covenant. When the last wax cooled on signatures, Starforged descended to dais. It lifted the womb shard, now glowing bright as dawn. With deliberate grace, it placed the crystal upon the charter. Light seeped like ink across vellum, lines solidifying into iridescent tracery. The treaty bore living sigil of Dragonfrost star, impossible to forge or erase. Gasps filled amphitheater. Maester Walken declared, voice wavering, that the womb recognized promise and sealed it beyond mortal tampering. From this moment, he claimed, those who broke the charter would find their steel brittle, their forges cold. Dragons obeying covenant would withhold breath from traitors. People believed they could feel faint warmth emanate from parchment as they touched their oath. Spring advanced. Ice thawed in gentle pulses. Fields near Winterfell green early, where frostbite regulated temperature at dusk, and Bronze Crown baked furrows by day. Starforged spent hours wings still above the heart tree, meditating in silence. The womb hung below its chest, light shifting with weather, rose gold at sunrise, sea green when rain threatened, deep indigo under starlight. Some whispered it listened to the realm's heartbeat, yet peace remained fledgling. Ravens carried rumor of Cersei amassing alchemists, forging wildfire shells laced with shards of dragon glass, intended to pierce steel hearts. Dawn's Prince Malon sent word of pirate corsairs sponsored by the Iron Throne, raiding sails bound for North. Jon convened War Council of Balance. Manderley commanded Northern Fleet. Redwine led blockade lines farther south. Torment trained volunteers as frost scouts adept at traversing snowfields in silence. One late evening, a rider from the Wall collapsed in Winterfell's yard, limbs black with frostbite. Through cracked lips, he spoke of a thunderous boom beyond Shivering Sea, an iceberg split by explosion of cerulean fire. From rift emerged shapes, akin to ice walkers yet winged, gliding on currents of howling wind. They carried javelins tipped with diamond shards that sang in air. They veered east towards Skagos, leaving aurora-like trails. Free folk feared return of sorcery deeper than Night King. Jon gathered his council. Time draws near when our covenant will be tested at edge of world. He looked to dragons perched above, Bronze Crown's armor shining, frostbite groomed by children's laughter, Starforged containing nascent miracle within twilight heart. When it comes, we meet night with flame and hush, but also with open hand. Bran, speaking through Raven perched upon lintel, answered in voice soft as branches brushing window. Endings shape beginnings. Steel birth dragons, dragons birth covenant, covenant births dawn. Yet dawn must pierce the longest night before it crowns day. Jon closed eyes a moment, feeling weight and wonder mesh. He thought of Lyanna's statue, of Rob's laughter lost, of Ygritte's arrow piercing his side, and Daenerys' tears vaporizing on Drogon scales. He thought of children now carving snow roses from cooled sparks. Balance might not erase scars, but it could guide steps forward. So he steadied sword, voice, hope. Beneath Winterfell's rising sun, the forged chimneys smoked with memory and promise. 3 dragons cut silhouettes against cerulean sky, bronze gleam, silver shimmer, star-speck shadow, each beating wings to shared rhythm. Far below, men and women of houses long estranged labored shoulder to shoulder, erecting new granaries heated by controlled flame, shaping ice reservoirs cooled by ordered frost, engraving charter copies onto copper plates to send south and across sea. In the hush before horn heralded morning drill, Jon whispered to himself, "May we wield them with the wisdom fire and ice never learned alone." The words vanished on wind, carried perhaps to valleys where foe gathered, carried maybe to gods listening in bark and sky. Wherever they traveled, promise followed. For balance, once forged, demands vigilant smith, and the smithing had only begun.